Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. This is another edition of Tales from the Road with Jesse Peters, and Jesse's on here from Axon Tire. He is the VP of Marketing. Is that the best way to put that?
Marketing
Jesse?
Director, very
Marketing
important
director.
Person. I make stuff look good, Casey. That's what
There
I
you
do.
go. That's why you're in marketing, baby.
There you
All
go.
right, man. Right on. So, Jesse's nice to come on once a month, talk about what they see happening out there as they travel the countryside and stuff that's going on there. So, Jesse, how you doing, man?
Good. Been a while and excited to bring a couple people. I know this is Tales from the Road, but honestly, we're going to peel back the curtain a little bit and show you what goes on back here at the office. So excited to talk about a little bit of the secret sauce behind what we do. But, leading into that, we've just been busy trying to handle everything from raw material delays to continued pricing fluctuations, and not to mention harvest here in the Midwest. Obviously, seems like it's been a pretty healthy harvest, but we're just trying to keep the wheels on the bus.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah, it's the delay side of this and all the ins and outs and freight and logistics and it's just a nightmare, man. It's getting harder by the day. It feels like to make all those, pull the rope tight enough to get it to the middle. It feels like.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we got to get crops out of the field. So
yeah,
that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Jesse, why don't you introduce who you got with you today?
All right. So to my right here in the studio, I've got Neil Berardi. Say hi, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
Neil is one of our sales engineers, and I also have, we're lucky enough to join us, Steve. Say hey, Steve. Oh, Steve, you're muted, or we can't hear your mic. You there?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
There
hello,
we
everyone.
go. So, Steve, just a quick bio. Steve's one of the owners of our company. And Steve, you've been doing this for how many years?
Yeah, well, if you go back, it all started probably back when I was in junior high, the old company. Uncle started that company, of course. Everybody probably knows, back in 1929. And been in it, started back in the probably the late 70s as a junior high kid, sweeping the floors. Yeah. And then been just been in it ever since, and learn as you go. Started out, on service truck, changing tires, and just kept going until we got where we are. So it's been a ride, but and it seems like there's always stuff new coming up. So you're learning every day.
Job security. So I like to say Steve's one of those guys that'll forget more about not just tires and wheels, but this industry than we'll ever remember, Casey. So I'm excited for you to chat with these guys, because they're really the engineering side behind what we do. We've over the course of this year met our sales guys. They're the relationship holders with the different parts of our country. But as they're talking to our customers, that next phone call they make is to one of these two guys. How do we make this happen?
Right.
So anyway, excited for you guys to chat about really the engineering side of what we do, because it's, it seems simple, but there's a surprising amount of complexity that goes into making some of these setups possible. So,
yep. All right. Well, this is one of the secret sauce type stuff is the stuff that I really enjoy doing the most. So Steve, let's just start with you. I'm a layman when it comes to tires. I'll be the first one to admit that. I know they're made of rubber and they're round, and if they're balanced correctly, they won't slip. I kind of got that part figured out. But when you look at some of the stuff you see right now, and especially some specialty crop, or whether it's a bigger machine in a different situation where there's row spacing is an issue or something like that, there's a lot more that go into tire and wheel combination than just go get me a 420 off the shelf over there and let's slap it on this sprayer and see what we can do.
Yeah, no, there is a lot more involved. It becomes pretty particular on some of those guys, especially if they're on narrow rows. You get into the 15-inch row, 20-inch row, 22-inch row stuff. You don't have a whole lot of room for air, and you get a 380 tire or 320 tire to go down those rows. Even a 320 to 12-inch wide going down a 15-inch row, you have virtually an inch and a half on the per side without running over one of the rows. And so with the new way they drive these tractors now with hardly touching the wheel, it helps, but there's still a lot of driver error that could be to run over a crop. So the accuracy of getting him down the center of that row is what we've been working at doing for a lot of these specialty crops. It's and you get onto sprayers the same way. Of course, they got adjustable axles on their sprayers, so it's that does help some if they can lock that in. But crazy things happen out there. I mean, it's I don't know if this has anything to do with your question or not, but I just had a guy call me today on his sprayer, flotation tires on his sprayers. He wanted to buff all the tread off because he was getting a little bit too much compaction with the bar lugs. I mean, you just get you get odd things happening all the time that people request, and it's to try to figure out how to help them is one of the things that we're here to do.
Yeah. So especially to that same point, I mean, machinery is not getting any smaller, and it's not, but it seems like it's just getting an NFL offensive lineman. They just keep getting bigger, but they also keep getting faster. So I guess as you take a look at some of those configurations and those kind of conversations that you're having, how do you have that conversation about weight and speed distribution when you're talking about tires?
Yeah, that is definitely what we have to consider, because there is you're getting 1,600 gallon tanks on some of these things, and they want to go to a 12-inch wide tire. Mm-hmm. They've got to know that if they want that kind of width on those tires to go down those rows, they either have to drive slower if the tire don't have the carrying capacity, or not just let any jack person get in it that is just a worker that doesn't care about it, because he could have an accident and cause some definite damage. So it's a conversation we have to have, that saying, hey, this tire only carries this weight at this speed, and if you try to exceed that, you could end up with trouble. And it's you're talking a $250,000 to $500,000 machine. It's not something you really want to throw in the ditch very often.
Not very often, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Neil, let's ask you this question to you. So how do you start making that decision between where do duals and triples and those kind of things start coming into play when you guys are looking at this different engineering, weight distributions and those kind of things across the spectrum of tires?
Well, I think probably one of the first things is just kind of getting a better understanding from the customer what they're trying to achieve, right? So, it really starts all the way back at the salesperson when that first phone call comes in or when that first request comes in. We try to get a really good feel as far as what the customer wants to do. So we're going to start asking questions, what piece of equipment is it? What kind of crops are they doing? What row spacing are they doing? What are they ultimately looking to achieve, right? And then we're going to try to match the best products that we can with what they're trying to do in that application, right? So, it just all starts to come down to run a number. Once we start to get that, we're going to start running numbers. So once we figure out what machine it is, what they're doing, we're going to start looking at weights. then we can go look at, what's our carrying capacity of that tire, that size, if they are trying to run row crop. And then, there's been certain circumstances where we might have to go back to them and say, hey, you're going to have to run duals because you don't have enough capacity with running singles if it's a heavier machine, something like that. But usually when the customer calls in, they have a pretty good idea of what they want to do, especially the guys that are running specialized equipment. Mm-hmm. Chances are they've been running it for a while. They know what it is.
Yeah.
And back when Steve was in junior high and we were trying to test a lot of these configurations and solutions out, Steve, I'm sure you were doing these measurements on an abacus way back then, but we're continuing to embrace technology. Neil, talk about some of the technology components and some of the, tolerances and how in depth and down to the minutia we can get with some of the advancements in technology and some of the things that we're seeing.
Yeah. So we've a big part of my job is designing this stuff in CAD. And then we also have what we design. Well, it was actually Stuart that designed in-house, what we call a row spacing calculator. And what that gives us the ability to do is we can take and plug in, that piece of equipment's, flange to flange measurements. Mm-hmm. So your front and your rear axle, or if it has a bar axle, obviously it's sliding hubs, but that way we can go and plug in those measurements, and on something like a waffle wheel, which is a 8-position wheel, until you start adding spacers or something like that, we can go ahead and figure out what kind of row spacings that we can hit using those calculators. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that I would set up in CAD as well. So that's kind of where it comes into, we try to make off the shelf wheels work if possible, but then we also are building a lot more of the custom wheels using CAD and using those measurements.
Yeah. And I think part of the point of getting these guys in front of you here today too, Casey, is yes, there's a distribution element to what we do, right? We do have almost 300,000 square feet of ag tires and wheels here, but it's really that custom application component that I really want people to appreciate. Mm-hmm. I think where we really fit in is that relational layer to know when, your sales guys are working a deal or a grower is asking a sales guy at a dealership a type of question. We want that next call to be to Axon. So again, to Neil's point, we can help solve the problem that the grower is trying to solve. That might mean an off-the-shelf tire and wheel package, or it might mean we start doing something unique that has never been tried before, and we're not scared of going there either. So
that's my next question. So, with your places out in California, your places up in Michigan, as far as diversity goes, from crop diversity, there's I don't know, probably 1,000 different things growing between those two states. And each one of them have a row spacing that could be as wide as 36 inches to as narrow as 12 inches. And a lot of that stuff, as you go up and down those rows, there's some custom built stuff when you start looking at some of these very one-off specialty pieces of equipment. So do you guys ever do anything where you work with the manufacturer to come up with that special tire or, a steel wheel or something like that to kind of help supplement those different kinds of specialty machines?
Steve, I'll throw that one to you. Oh, you're muted.
Yep. Sorry. Yes, there is a few manufacturers we work with that we actually do specialty stuff for them that they don't offer on say their build your own type of tractor. So we do offer them a package that would get them down to different rows, and it's mostly that manufacturer calling us and saying they have this model of tractor, whether it's flange or bar axe or what it is. We try to get all that information from them, then what they're trying to do and what their application is, what row spacing, what height they want, speed. We try to get all the information, then we can come up with a package for them. And we have some pre-built packages for them because it's just a common thing on certain applications. Florida's another one that runs some different crops or fruits, vegetables, and some of the rest of the stuff for orchards and some of the rest of it. So these manufacturers don't like to offer everything under the sun, and so that's where we kind of I would say lean more toward and specialize in is to try to take up that they don't offer, just so we can be there for them and help their dealers out. A lot of times the manufacturer actually sends the dealers to us instead of, going through the whole distribution channel. They just send the dealer to us to help them on those. So we're here to help.
Yep.
Neil, talk about, I know you went down, it was months and months ago, earlier this year, but talk about, as an example, that case study of the strawberry.
Yeah, I was actually just going to jump in on that. Because I was just thinking about that. Yeah. We're sitting here talking about this stuff and not really giving any context. So we had a customer call in from down in Florida. Well, it was actually an implement dealer that called in to us. They're looking to set up a John Deere 6 Series tractor. I think it was a 6120R, if my memory is correct. And they run 6 Series John Deeres in strawberry fields. Now, as far as row spacing, I'm not sure exactly what the beds were set up on, but the tire spacing had to be 96 inches exactly. And usually when we start talking about that type of stuff, fruits and vegetables, their tolerances are extremely tight. So we had to get that within a half an inch. So that's a 1/4 inch per side.
Because it was hitting the leaves as it was.
Yeah, it has to be perfectly down the dead center of that in between the mounds. And so when we went out and we figured out, which we do have a database on some of that stuff that I try to keep updated, but we have to figure out exactly what our flange to flange is on that tractor. And then we go through and we set up whichever wheels that we think are going to work best on there. So typically on that stuff, we use what's called waffle wheels, which is multi-position wheels. And we can go through there and we can configure, because we know what the offset and the draw is on the centers. And we can configure that inside of that calculator, inside of CAD, to fit exactly how we want it to. And so not only do we try to get it to fit perfectly on 96 inch rows, but I think they were also asking us if we could get it down another measurement, but I can't remember what it was. I think it was over 100 inches. And so having that calculator and being able to design that in-house, it gives us the ability to, help the customer reach more than one row spacing. And so that's where that's having computer design, it really helps instead of just being able to draw it out on paper.
Yeah. And that'd be an example of something that maybe doesn't have the scale to get the attention of the manufacturer, but, regionally or because of some specific type of crop, that's exactly where we want to play. And that was a deal that, an implement dealer was trying to solve a problem for a grower. And that's an exact scenario that I think these guys really have a passion for helping. So.
Yep. All right. So one other thing, last time we had this conversation, you were talking about compaction, and that's a big thing on everyone's mind. And I mean, you can go pretty much anywhere, 30-inch row spacing, near typical row spacing, and duals up, those kind of things with, 480 to 520s or whatever it is that you're doing. But in a lot of these situations, especially like your strawberry example you had right there, where compaction is something that's on a different scale, how are you using the tools you have now to kind of combat some of the compaction issues on some of these specialty crop situations that you guys are looking at?
Go ahead.
Well, so obviously we try to, it's been the talk for quite a while now, but obviously we try to push people towards, the IF and the VF technology, right? Whenever we can. Because then, especially on those smaller tractors, if they're not as heavy of a piece of equipment, they can lower their pressures. But at the same time, it is a battle both ways, because on row crop stuff, just like what Steve was just mentioning, we're trying to get them as narrow as possible to fit down the rows, while at the same time of, giving them traction, giving them, or keeping their compaction as low as possible.
Yep.
Steve, what are you hearing, or how do you help those conversations when, maybe, compaction comes up, but, because of the machine or whatever, just slapping a wider tire isn't always possible. I mean, how do you help customers through those conversations?
Yeah, wider tire isn't always the answer. If you go taller, you can get a bigger footprint on the taller tires. You got to make sure you got clearance, of course, but there is that also. And it depends on what they're doing. I mean, like I said, that you can go to a wider tire for certain purposes, but in some applications, you just got to do the best you can with what you do have and give them the most flotation. I mean, you go up, some of that stuff you can go up to maybe a 420 tire just to get a little bit more width than the 380 tire, and try to get the height and to try to get your little longer footprint and get the VF, like I said, like Neil was saying, the VF or the IF tires. That's and the farmers are becoming more and more knowledgeable on the IF VF technology, and it's starting to come on. Where it's getting more noticed than just the standard cheapest thing out there that they want to put on. They're starting to realize that there is advantages to some of that IFVF technology to help their yields. That's what they want.
And I think Steve brings up a good point. When Neil and we spent a couple days testing different footprints on a sprayer just because, we had one available. So we started putting different tires on there, adjusting the air pressure and putting them back down and looking at the footprints. And when you talk about footprint, right, which is where the tire meets the ground and that contact area, it's not just the width, which is what everyone kind of goes to. If we can spread that tire out wide, that reduces the compaction. It's actually the length is where we see the most benefit. So when that tire's hitting the ground, you don't want to just look at how wide it is, and that's really the benefit of one of these IF or VF type of technology tires. It's the length of that footprint, spreading it out lengthwise where you actually see the most benefit, which seems counterintuitive. But again, I'll reference it again. If anybody wants to see the results of that footprint study, I think it was really compelling. Happy to send it, reach out to us and we'll get it. We'll get that to you. But yeah. That was a good point, Steve. It's not just the width; it's the length of that footprint that hits the ground. So
it's like
anyway,
kind of like smashing the tire down, be kind of like a track situation almost to some extent, where you've got that elongated footprint that's whatever it is, 3 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet wide, long, or whatever it might be, to give you that extra traction to the ground. That's a great point. I never actually thought about it like that, but.
Yeah, but if you're
I'm the same way as you are. I'm always looking at the width, like, oh wow, look how wide that is now from what it was at the top.
But you're going to be super limited. I mean, if you reduce the air pressure in that tire, right, and it's going to squish down, you're going to see some increase of the width of that tire. But actually, where you see the real benefit,
right,
and this is where a wheel setup is really beneficial, is what is the tolerance that tire has to get longer. And obviously tracks, if you can go that route, there's a lot of benefit to that. That's not always either financially or because of the type of setup possible. Sure. And that's really where we start playing with unique wheel setups, tire setups, and IFVF technology. It really gives you that tolerance, right, to go long instead of wide. So
I never thought about it like that, but you're right. I always look at it, those compaction tests with VF and IF technology in it. I'm looking at the thing going like, man, that went from being like the tire's this wide and then it smashes out to this wide. So, oh man, you're getting all that extra traction. But to put it in that perspective, you're right. And
if you're limited with row spacing, right, your only option is to try to get that tire spread as long as possible, right? Because if you go wide, you're going to mess up whatever you're trying to grow. So it is possible to come up with unique setups, even with narrower row spacing, and we can help with that. So.
Outstanding. Well, Jess, this is good stuff as usual, man. If folks want to reach out to you at Axon, what's the best way to do that?
Just plug our website. I'd go to axontire.com. We're all on there. If you send an email to sales@axontire.com, say, hey, really like to know more about a unique setup I'm trying to accomplish, we'll make sure that gets to Neil or Steve. Just reach out to us there and we'll hook you up. So axontire.com, shoot us an email at sales@axontire.com. And I have another free gift since I've got my technology guys here. These guys are nerds for CAD drawings and unique stuff. So I'm going to give another gadget away. I've got a infrared thermometer I'm going to give to any of your listeners that reach out. Neil and I were chatting. He said, "Oh, those are really beneficial for tracks."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what does a guy use these for when it comes to track setups or trying to identify the tolerances of a setup?
Yeah, we mainly use them when we put on a new set of tracks. We're checking the temperature on either side of the guide lugs to make sure it's properly aligned.
Yeah, so these are cool. I'm going to give away anybody. Now you got to reach out to us, right? Go to axontire.com, fill out a form, or shoot an email to sales@axontire.com. And for the Moving Iron podcast listeners this month, I'm going to give away a free infrared thermometer. So hooking you up.
Those are wicked handy, especially because we have a lot of guys out here that do some potato stuff, and they do a lot of roading, and using that gun on the road, especially when they're on pavement, is a big deal. We're trying to kind of retrain those guys on when to stop and when to use talc and when, all that kind of stuff. So
think of us as another tool in your tool belt. So I'm actually giving away actual tools just as that reminder. We are that extra tool in your tool belt next time you go to sell a tractor. So we're here to help you guys and your listeners move more iron. So that's what we wake up every day passionate about.
That's awesome. Well, Jesse, appreciate you guys being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us. And thanks for a great year. We've enjoyed partnering with you and looking forward to doing even bigger and better things in the future. So thanks for having us.
So am I. I'm looking forward to it as well. So I am Casey.
Thanks,
Seymour.
Casey.
Thank you. I'm Casey Seymour with
Casey.
Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the latest edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. Also go to MovingIronLLC.com for all the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast, as well as blogs that are out there. So for Steve, Neil, and Jesse, I'm Casey Seymour. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out. You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to axontire.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.